Googles and the Facebooks and the TikToks treat us like products. They take our data and they use it, and they give us nothing in return other than entertainment. I traveled the country going to Super Bowls, the biggest sporting events, the biggest music festivals.
Did that light bulb go off that you needed to get in bigger rooms?
When I realized the 100K wasn't really enough, we had a $1.2 million a year business. We flipped over 100 houses a year. I've gotten more business than I could ever care to deal with simply by just...
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Millionaire in the Making podcast. My name's Gage.
I'm Justin.
And we need to talk to Justin before we get into this podcast. What is that?
Man, this is Liquid Death, man.
Is this us asking Liquid Death to sponsor us?
It is the best water you're ever going to have out of a gas station.
How much was that? Like $5?
I think it was like $3.50, $3.
All right, enough with Liquid Death. We're not asking anything from them, but I am asking something from you guys. The like total has been absolute cheeks. For the amount of like to view ratio we're getting, it's just awful. So first off, before we get into this video, we do have a very special guest. I'm going to ask you to like the video. Hopefully you did that. Justin, please introduce our guest.
I'm going to take it a step further. I'm going to ask you to share the video because we are getting a good little bit of shares. So I guess we just need to double up on the likes. But today we have Brent, and he has an interesting story. Interesting. You guys are going to love this one. Go ahead and give us a quick 1 to 2 minute elevator pitch for who you are.
So my name's Brent Moreno. I'm from Mississippi originally, a little small town by way of multiple places, LA, Chicago, South Carolina. I've lived all over the country. I spent 10 years doing experiential marketing for Fortune 500 companies, so all the cool events and festivals that you've ever been to, I've probably been to them. Yes, I have the t-shirt. No, I don't want to go back to most of them unless it's something cool like the Super Bowl. Got into real estate, really quickly outpaced my income, and realized that that was my ticket out of the 9-to-5 kind of rat race, even though I had a really cool job. I was getting married to an attorney, and she wasn't going to put up with the fact that I was going to be gone for 300 days a year, nor did I want to anymore. So kind of got burnt out, found real estate, started teaching others how to get involved in real estate. Now I'm down here, living here in Orange Beach, Gulf Shores full-time. I do media, marketing, and a little bit of real estate on the side, and really intrigued by AI now. So I've been jumping really heavy into a lot of AI products and sharing about what I'm learning and actually building some tools that people can use.
Oh, man. All right, let's pick which rabbit hole we want to go down.
we got plenty to dive into.
I vote I'm the real estate guy, so let's do probably the first section for real estate.
Yeah.
Tell us about your first deal.
First deal story is always the best deal story. So I got introduced to wholesaling through a friend of mine named Max Maxwell. He's huge on YouTube now, thanks to this guy sitting behind the camera over here. But he shared a picture of a house on Instagram while I was still touring, and he said, "Man, look," he said, "I bought this house for 30 grand. I had some money." I was like, "Hey, man, let's go in on a deal together." He's like, "I already sold it, made 20 grand." He told me about wholesaling houses. I'd never heard of it before. I always assumed that if you wanted to get into real estate, you had to have a ton of money. You had to have 100 grand in your pocket, be able to go buy something, fix it up, and sell it, right? That's just how we're taught and wired, how things work. Somebody has to have the money. When I found wholesaling and figured out that you don't necessarily have to have the money, you just need to find an opportunity and lock that property up under contract and just sell the paper as an assignment, I was like, all right, this is game over. So the first deal that I found, I actually didn't find it. It was an Uber driver because I had hired Uber drivers. I didn't really hire them. I was paying Uber drivers referral fees for anything that I could close on because I was on the road, so I couldn't go look for houses. And I didn't want to spend money on marketing because what if I didn't make any of it back? So I just went ahead and hired Uber drivers and told them I wanted to look for beat-up houses. You're driving on the road anyways. Send me pictures of houses with the address, and I'll contact the owners. If I can get them to get me a deal, then I'll pay you $1,000. Well, the very first one was actually the very first property that was ever sent to me. Wasn't the first person that I talked to. I called like 5-6 times. Dude was very hard to get in touch with. We go over to the house. It was about 2 miles from where I was living at the time in South Carolina. House was probably, I thought it was worth about 130 fixed up, right? That's what we call the ARV, the after repair value. And I knew the 70% rule, which is what they, basically all the books tell you. Things change, buyers are different, but we'll get into all that crap later. But I found this property, and I contacted the owner, and he said, "Man, I just want what I got in it." I looked at it on Zillow, and it said he had paid like $25,000 for the house.
Oh, that's a payday.
And I immediately, instead of jumping into it and like, all right, where would we sign? I said, you know what? I said, let me think about it. Right? I was like, let me think about it for a second. I'll give you a call back. Let me run some numbers, make sure this makes sense. And he wanted $27,000 because he had some taxes and stuff like that on there. And I was like, okay, great. And I immediately had called some buyers that I'd met because I went to the foreclosure auctions to go meet buyers and see what they were buying. I was asking some questions like, where are you buying? How much are you spending? How much repair work are you normally doing? Just so I get an idea of like, okay, this is what people are paying for things. Very first guy that shows up, I think I put it out there at like 42,000 or something like that. Guy shows up, he walks around, he asks a couple questions. He goes, how much do you want for it? He did the old classic, ask me twice. I said, well, it's listed at 42. He goes, well, how much do you want for it? I was like, well, I mean, I guess I'd take 40. He goes, okay, good. We'll have $5,000 in earnest money tomorrow, and we'll close on it in 10 days. So, okay, great. So we signed the paperwork, paid my Uber driver $1,000. She started recruiting more Uber drivers. And from there, I ended up doing multiple deals. That guy ended up wholesaling my wholesale deal to another buyer for like $10,000 more. So I left a lot of money on the table. We just call that a seminar. But for the first deal, I think I made $12,000 net. I was like, all right, this is a repeatable process that I can do over and over and over again. If I can do just one of these every single month, that replaces my income, which was a six-figure income as it was anyways. So that's when the light switch hit. And I was like, okay, if I can do this 2, 3, 4 times a month, and then I met people who were doing $100,000 a month. I met people who were doing $200,000 a month, $300,000 a month, until eventually I got into rooms where people were doing, had $8, $9, $10 million businesses strictly from just wholesaling. And my mind was like, okay. Whereas used to, my goal was when I was young, I was like, I want to get a job that I love doing and make $100,000 a year. If I can get to $100,000 a year, now granted, this was late 90s, early 2000s, so $100,000 ain't crap anymore.
No.
But that was my goal. And then I got there and I realized that it really wasn't necessarily about the money. It was about like how I was spending my time and owning that time.
So I got to ask, are you buying anything to hold and rent long term, or were you just wholesale, like quick in, quick out, or were you trying to like build that cash flow up?
So at first it was strictly just to build the cash. I build as much cash up as possible. Now strictly I buy to hold, occasionally buy to flip. But when I just got started, I just needed cash, right? I needed to get as much cash as possible. Plus I didn't want to dive into too many realms of real estate all at one time.
Smart.
Because I just knew that if you can master one thing very, very well, very quickly, like then you move on to something else, right? Then you get in, because you're in real estate, like having a long-term tenants and dealing with, sometimes dealing with one property is much harder than dealing with 100 properties.
Yes. One bad tenant is, one good tenant is worth their weight in gold. One bad tenant is worth their weight in crap.
Yeah.
You don't even want to deal with it.
So I didn't want to get into flipping because, what do I know about flipping houses? Like, I'm not a contractor, so it's like, I have a general idea of what things cost to repair, but that doesn't make me a flipper. There's so many things that can go wrong. So we kind of eased into it and dipped my toes into the flipping side of things. And then now my philosophy is I try to get everything that I can as creative as possible. And if I can get creative terms on something, I keep it almost 100% of the time. I have never bought a house using a bank, and I've done well over 200-300 transactions.
Right.
So never used a bank.
I just started using a bank about a year or two ago, and I acquired 20 plus properties before I ever did
and
that.
Leveraging banks are definitely the way to go, especially if you have those contacts.
I didn't even use the banks to buy the properties. I just used them to give me cash out refinances. And HELOCs, commercial lines of credits too.
Let's stay here for a minute, because a lot of people do struggle with creative financing. Do you mind telling a couple of your most creative ways you got creative financing a deal or anything like that?
It was currently the house that I'm living in it's probably like a $1.5 million beach house duplex on the water on the lagoon. And it's, most people think like, well, who would sell to somebody on owner finance? Like, well, people would sell for a lot of reasons. And the number one thing is that I like to tell people is that values are subjective, right? It has nothing to do about cash. Money is just how we view everything, how everything transacts. Your values are totally different. The same reason why people would sell me a house for 50% of its value is the same reason why somebody would sell me their house for full value, as long as it meets their objectives and what they value, what they need to get out of the transaction. So you can create win-win deals. His reasoning was it was investment property, right? Well, what happens when you sell an investment property if you don't go take that money and put it into another investment property? You get hit with a huge tax liability, right? A lot of tax burden, right? You're going to have capital gains, and then if you depreciated that on your taxes for the last 27 and a half years or for however long you've owned it, you're going to pay all that depreciation right back to the government. Mm-hmm. So the only thing you can do is to 1031 that money into something of equal or greater value, or I like to tell them, I just educate them just enough so they can go and get education from the people that they trust. So I was like, hey, talk to your accountant about IRS publication 537, which is installment sales. And in that publication, it talks about how deferring the payment will reduce the tax liability up front. So if you get it over time, become the bank, now if you take that money, say they cleared $500,000, well, what are you going to do with that money? Well, if they don't have another investment property they got to put it in or something they need to put the cash in, then say, most people will say, I got stocks or I'm going to put it in the bank. What's the bank going to give you for it? What, 1%? What if I gave you 5? You become the bank on this. And we all know who wins at Monopoly, the bank.
That's how I built my entire portfolio. I just kept on asking older people, 50, 60, 70 plus years old, I'm saying, your house is paid off. You got 20, 30 rentals. Give me your worst rental where they always call you at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm going to take that problem on and I'll give you 4.5%, 4%.
Yeah.
I'll give you 5% for 30 years. And I'll even go a step further and attach a life insurance policy to it. That way, if I die, you're paid off.
I like that.
Day one, I'm going to set you up on an auto pay system with my bank. If I get into a car crash, get put into a coma, you are fine for 6 months. If you don't hear from me after 6 months, I'm probably dead. But then life insurance will kick in.
So both you guys, let's talk owner financing for a second. What do you look for? Like, what kind of house are you looking at, or person? Like, what are you looking for when you're trying to find an owner financing vendor lien deed?
Older
people?
That means that's usually the older people have houses that are paid off. That's just the best in my book. I mean, it's hard to find somebody who's in their 20s to 40s with a house completely paid off.
So that's the catch. It has to be totally paid off?
Well, not necessarily. I do a lot of subject to as well. So subject to investing is I don't assume the notes. I'm not having to go through the bank. Now, they do have a due on sale clause. Now, as long as the payments are being made and things are structured properly, chances of you ever being called due are practically zero. But you can take over someone's payments, right? That's another thing that I like to do. So like one here recently in Gulf Shores, house got destroyed by Sally. Not destroyed, but I wouldn't live there. There's a lot of places I bought that I wouldn't live there. But lady was living in it. She was struggling. She was behind on her payments, facing foreclosure. And literally the day of I went by the house every day, knocking on their door. The day of the foreclosure, we kept asking her. I was like, hey, I wouldn't go every day, but like once a week we were going and checking in on her. And she every time she just kept kicking the can down the road. It's like, oh, I got it figured out. I'm going to send this. I'm going to take care of this, yada, yada. A lot of people will say that to you, and that they'll say they have it all taken care of, and they don't. So I've seen it enough times to know that if I just keep checking up on them, eventually they'll understand that I'm probably their only option. I'm the only one here knocking on their door. So here's what we did for her. She had a house that's probably worth $250,000 on a 1 acre lot, and probably worth a little more than that. But it was very beat up. It needed at least $80,000 to $90,000 in work. She owed, I want to say, $30-something thousand. That's it. And her payments were stupid cheap, like $600-700 a month. We caught the entire balance up, right? So that's the one thing about foreclosures is that you have to reinstate the loan, right? Once it goes into foreclosure, you can't just start making monthly payments again. You got to pay that whole lump sum back up. So you pay that whole entire lump sum up. I think it was like 15 grand. We paid 15 grand. We took over the note, right? So we started making the monthly payments on it, and we were deciding, I sat on it for way too long, which cost me too much money because I was trying to decide if I was going to tear it down and build 2 houses, or if I was just going to redo that one and sell it. And at that time, the market was kind of going crazy, but I also knew that there was some, things were slowing down a little bit. So what I ended up deciding to do is I just literally sold it to another investor. While all I had out of pocket was the 15 grand out of my own pocket and the 6 months of payments that I made. And I was able to cut her a $30,000 check after it sold because that was the deal. I told her, I was like, I'll split the profits with you. I'll catch your balance up. I'll give you a $5,000 check to help you get moved and get your new location, which is extremely helpful to her. And once we sell it, I'll just split it with you, 50-50. And that's what we did. So we ended up making, I put in 15, I made like 30,000 and she made 30,000.
Hell of a deal.
Yeah, right. It's so when you talk about like how do you find creative deals, it's all about asking the right questions and figuring out what their real problem is and trying to figure out a way to solve it.
So when you talk about trying to solve the problem, it seems like you do have a lot of knowledge. Where did you learn all of this stuff? How did you educate yourself on how to, you know, create a creative deal or anything like that?
A lot of money, personal development. So, and mentors. I will, you know, we'll get into like the whole story of my partnership and all that stuff later, but I was in a partnership where his dad had been doing creative finance investing since the 70s. So he's seen a lot of ups and downs. He's seen interest rates at 18, 19%. Back when like older people were more familiar with owner financing because that was the only way you bought and sold when interest rates are 18 and 19%, right? You couldn't really afford those payments or that amount of interest. So a lot of older people are already familiar with it, but him being in the game for that long and like being around him on a weekly basis helped. But then also I paid a lot of money to be in masterminds with a lot of very smart. I never want to be the smartest person in the room. So I go to, I think I paid 15 grand for my first mastermind. It was called Boardroom. It's by a guy named like Sean Terry and Kent Clothier. Made a lot of connections with a lot of players that were doing, you know, $1 million a year. And I was just getting started, but I just knew I needed to be in a room with people who were doing it better. I jumped in. They taught me how to automate a lot of my processes. They taught me a lot about creative finance. But a lot of the creative finance stuff definitely came from Leon, which was my former business partner's dad.
So when did that light bulb go off that you needed to get in bigger rooms? It sounds like you said you just wanted to make $100K, keep a job, be happy. When did that light bulb, when did it switch?
When I realized the 100K wasn't really enough, and if I worked really hard for 5 or 6 years, that I could have the life that pretty much anybody could ever want. And if I invested properly, then everything I just get paid to exist. It's actually one of the affirmations that I say every day is I get paid to exist.
That's good stuff. Justin, you want to stay on real estate for a minute, or you want to keep walking down the road?
You know I want to stay on real estate, but there's so much more. Let me give me about 5 more minutes of real estate. What is the biggest deal that you've done yet? Multifamily, RV, commercial? What's a sector you're interested in?
So I've always wanted to get into multifamily. We talked about this for a second, right? Like, you know, why didn't I, you know, get into and start having rentals and all this other stuff? It's like, again, I know enough about multifamily to go and probably acquire multifamily, but it's not one of those things that I'm very comfortable in. So until I feel very comfortable and confident about something, I don't usually dive head first. Now I know there's a lot more money to be made, and this also has a little bit to do with like who I surrounded myself with. Leon, one of my former mentors, he was a huge single family guy, hated multifamilies. So a lot of that, he also hated subject twos. Right. And for the longest time, I thought subject twos were, you know, don't do that, they're the devil. And then
what's a subject to for our viewers?
Subject to means you're taking, it's subject to XYZ. Typically, 9 times out of 10 in real estate, it means it's subject to the existing finance, right? So whatever finance structure is in place with the bank. So I can't wait for the day that I can go pick up some of these 2 and 3% interest rates that everybody's been locking down. I'm just going to go jump right back in. I'm going to jump over and take over their mortgages, right? I'm not assuming it. I'm not asking for the bank's permission. I'm just going to start paying it on their behalf.
And what kind of contract do you write up for that? You just say, hey, look, I'm going to make your payments for a year. I'm going to make your payments for 6 months. How do you like to structure that?
So what I like to do typically with a subject to, it really depends on what the end game is and what their ultimate goal is and how much of a time crunch they're in, right? So if I can keep it for as long as possible, that's what I'm going to do. But if they're in need of some kind of money, and we say within the next 6 months to a year, and I know they want to be paid out and taken care of, then I usually just try to sell that to somebody else. So it just really depends on what they want, but on what the seller wants, because I try to ultimately make it a win-win deal. So if they need cash, then I try to get them that cash. But everything's all kind of a give and take, right? You say price, I get terms. You want terms, I get price, right? So if you need the cash right now, then I can only pay you a certain amount. because it's going to be much less than what I could pay you over time, right? So to figure out how to answer that question exactly is use simple words, right? I in all of my contracts, I have a term section that's only like 3 lines long. And I literally just write out like subject to existing financing, XYZ amount a month for this amount. And I take that, give it to my attorney. She puts it into the contract and we're good to go. Literally the contract that I told you about the lady that was getting foreclosed on, there was so much back and forth going on. We literally had 1 hour before the auction started, before we could go and catch the balance up. We had my brother-in-law was at the bank with the check. I was waiting for her signature. I literally took a yellow piece of notepad and we wrote the contract out verbatim and had her sign it, date it, everything. Took that to my attorney, which happens to be my wife. It's a valid contract. You don't actually need a full-fledged subject to contract or anything like that. As long as everything's written out in plain English, it's fine enough.
Have you ever had a wholesale get sold out from under you where you get it pretty much locked down under contract and all of a sudden 2 weeks later you let them know, hey, we're going to close, and they're like, oh, well, we just sold this to somebody else?
Yeah, I have.
Okay.
And there's not much you can do about it.
There is something. You can record it. You can record an affidavit with the courthouse and that'll put a cloud on the title.
You can.
But not everybody does that. And it's kind of a pain in the ass to do that.
It's a pain in the ass, but it's also, again, at that point I failed.
Yeah.
If somebody came behind me and was able to get it under contract and then get it sold or sell it or whatever, I failed to build the trust that I needed to build with the seller to even be doing business with them in the first place.
I like that perspective.
We got to stay here. We got to stay here. You said you failed. I don't know if you know, but on Millionaire in the Mega podcast, we're all transparent about everything.
Yeah.
Do you mind touching on a couple failures or just mishaps you had in real estate while we're still on real estate?
Yeah, I mean, I've got a couple right now. I mean, I was telling you guys earlier about the boat. It's like, in my mind, everything works. I'm very optimistic about things. But I have a flip house that I've had for over a year that should be, once everything's said and done and I actually can get it finalized, it should be about $150,000, profit, which is a good swing for a house. Again, I took it over subject to. They owed like $300,000 on the house. It was in foreclosure. Nobody was living there. The parents died. And I went and gave the guy, I think, $5,000 to take over the note because he wasn't going to get anything for it anyways. And I knew it was going to need about $80,000 in work. I wasn't down here full time, so my brother-in-law found a contractor. Well, like day 2 of that contractor getting the work, he gets locked up. But he's like, don't worry about it. He said, my crew's going to be there. We're good. Well, I didn't know his crew was like his mom who was helping him out and another guy. So I get down here and like nothing's hardly done. They're putting floors down before they've even painted the house. I'm like, what's going on here, guys? Like I'm already written off, like giving them like $30,000 or $40,000 of my money. We had a really good contract with them and we could turn around and sue them. But man, it's just all about like what's my time's worth on that. But I've gotten burned by at least 3 contractors on this house out here. But again, I take massive amounts of responsibility. I don't like to babysit people. I just like to give you money and say, hey, this is what you do for a living. Go figure it out. But like we had an instance where they stopped working on our house because it needed windows, and the windows were going to be like 8 months to come in during COVID. So like they literally stopped, and I had no idea. And I show up, and the windows go in, and I'm thinking, oh, as soon as the windows get here, we're done. It's like, no, we moved on to some other projects while we were waiting on that. I was like, oh, guys, I'm literally paying $3,000 a month in mortgage on this house every single month that you guys were out here, that we're not out here. It's cost me $3,000 a month. Like this thing should have been done. And they never finalized, and their bookkeeping was terrible. They tried to overbill me. They didn't even account for $20,000 that I'd given them in their invoice. I was like, what? You didn't account for, like, you're telling me I owe you this. So we ended up having to go different ways with them. Then I found we were having an issue with our roof. The roof was leaking through the walls because of the way the house was built. It wasn't the roofer's fault necessarily, but there was a lot of flashing and stuff that he didn't put up, which I didn't know until I got another roofer out there. That roofer is now out of business. So we could go and we were talking about memorandums and lawsuits and all this other stuff. It's like, okay, yes, you can do that, but I have to look at it through like, number one, is it worth my time? Number two, what do I gain from doing that? right? So like, okay, I'm not, that somebody screwed me over. They made $10,000 when I could have, but now I've, not only did I drag these sellers who ultimately got what they wanted through the mud, I'm also dragging another business owner through the mud for doing something shady. I can talk to my peers or my network and they'll all understand what's going on, and that's usually more than enough than trying to figure out how can I go around people and get involved in all these lawsuits.
So you touched on time for a second. Do you mind talking about what your time's worth and how you delegate that? Because I think a lot of younger people, as they're like starting to scale their businesses and just scale in life, look at that hurdle and don't know how to jump over it and start. Like a lot of people would work on the house on their own or do the rehab themselves. And
there's nothing wrong with that. I personally will tell you, I'm not the most handy person alive. You can ask my wife. She's actually probably more handy than I am. But yeah, one of the things I love to do whenever I'm on a stage is I like to ask the audience, like, time is what? And everyone goes, time is money. I was like, no, time is not money. Time is more valuable than money. And once you understand that, it's like if I told you I'll give you $10 million, but you have to spend the next 10 days doing everything that I tell you to do, exactly the way I tell you to do it. And oh, by the way, at the end of that 10 days, you die. Would you?
Hell no.
Is that worth $10 million to you? No, what about $100 million?
I don't think there's a price tag for that.
Exactly, right? So how much is your time worth? It's worth more than money. Right, so I look at your way you're looking at it is like, okay, well, what's my hourly basis, right? So what's a $5 task, which is a good way to look at things, because that's the reason I don't, and we're in the South, so people will make fun of you. Oh, you have somebody mow your yard? Like, you're just lazy. You have somebody clean your house and do your laundry? Like, well, I look at it, that's a $10 an hour task or a $15 an hour task. If I can make $500, $1,000 an hour, why am I doing that?
You hear the same thing every podcast, don't you?
Yeah, you do. I keep trying to ask everybody to nail it into their heads. Like it's a hard concept to grasp. Like, okay,
it is very hard.
Let me go back to you guys. Both of y'all probably had to overcome this. When you were looking at that and you had to take that jump, it was probably hard to take that jump and really move on past working for time like that.
Certain things. Well, once you become when you're legitimately a business owner, look, you're going to be, and you're starting from scratch, and so you don't have a lot of money. You're going to be in the weeds, and you're going to be doing everything yourself. That's just no ifs, ands, or buts. But as you're doing it, the way you do it is think about the things that you're doing and the impact that you're having on your business, right? So if this is me writing something for a blog, like how much potential is this blog going to bring to me? Can somebody do this for $10 or $15 an hour? And if the answer is yes, but I try to focus on strictly revenue generating opportunity or activities. That's it.
All right, you want to move on past real estate? I got the segue to the next one.
Yeah, that was good. It hurts me. I could do this for another hour and a half.
All right, so we touched on time. What are you doing with your time now? Or what have you been doing on your time within the past year, let's say?
I mean, you were talking about failures earlier. So just take a step back. I did have a partnership division. We had a $1.2 million a year business. We flipped over 100 houses a year. When I say flip, some of that was flip, some of it was wholesale. We had about 30 properties together. We built a software business together. I took ownership of that during the partnership division. But like within 6 months, I had lost my dad to COVID, who was perfectly healthy. He was 58 years old, which is another thing about why I feel like each and every day that you have here is more important. Like I don't think about things like most people think about how they teach you in school. Like, go to college, get a degree, work your way up the corporate ladder, retire at 65, and then enjoy the rest of your life. Like my dad didn't even make it to 65. He did everything right. So what if I don't make it to 65? I'd much rather take advantage of every opportunity that I have now to go and do the things that I love and that I enjoy and find ways to make money around that. So that's what's led me to where I am now, to where I'm not focused on building a real estate business, even though I'm really good at it and I know it. I'm not passionate about it. So I'm actually taking my own advice that I used to give students for a long time. Is like, find something you're extremely passionate about and then become really good at that. And once you become really good at that, you can charge a fee for it. No matter what you're interested in, there's 1,000 other people that are also interested in the same thing. Find your tribe, choose your vibe, right? Because if you can build an audience around something that you enjoy doing, you can monetize it, thanks to YouTube and social media and things like that, right? So now there's really no excuse for anybody not to turn their passion into a $10,000 a month business. And it's doable. It's not the easiest thing in the world, but you can do it. It's actually a lot easier than most people think, but as long as you're consistent, it all comes back to consistency.
100%. I love that. Consistency is something we touch on a lot. Do you mind diving down that a little bit deeper? Because I do think a lot of people are stuck in that like hallway of like, okay, I got to go right or left. Is it passion or is it just monetary gain instantly?
If you're doing it for the money, you're going to burn yourself out. Because once you reach a certain level of income, it's not really about the money anymore.
That's deep.
More than money.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be something that you wake up for every single day and you're pumped to do. Like, because if you're not, you're going to get burnt out. You're going to get tired. That's the reason I left real estate. It's like, I have no passion about going and building $100,000 business. I mean, there's a couple other reasons, because I also looked around the room, those same rooms I'm in, and I look at it as a business model and how much time, energy, and effort do I have to put into that. $1 million a year is a lot of money to a lot of people. I mean, you're in the top, 1% if you're doing $1 million a year. But you have $30,000 a month in overhead and marketing expenses. You have another $30,000 a month in employees. You're all constantly putting out fires. You're constantly dealing with contractors. You're constantly dealing with tenants. You're constantly dealing with all this stuff. And like, you could hire a COO that takes care of a lot of that. Hire a CEO and step fully out of that business. But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, I looked at these business models. A really, really good wholesale operation runs at about 50% profitability. Like a really good one, or a really big one. If you're doing 50%, you're doing really good.
It's amazing.
You're really, and I know a couple of those guys. But like, there's $3 million a year is what this one company was doing that had 50% profitability. It's two brothers. By the time they split that, right? So that's $1.5 million. So let's say you're $750,000 a year, which is phenomenal. But for the amount of infrastructure, the amount of headaches, the amount of people that they have to manage, I'm like, okay, I know this kid that's 18 years old on his laptop making $2 million a year with a VA that he pays $10 an hour. If he can figure that out, then I can figure out a way to go and make money doing digital marketing, media, and building software solutions for different industries. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I enjoy that. I've always been a bit of a nerd, and obviously with my marketing background, I've always been really into marketing.
So staying on this, what you're into, what damage are you trying to do? Like, what fires you up? You said marketing a little bit, but it's bigger than that, obviously. What fires you up, and what are you really hoping to change?
So I'm considering myself, and this can be a little bit egotistical, I guess, but I consider myself a digital visionary. I believe that we're sitting on our own personal gold mines because data is more valuable than oil. It actually is. Your big data is a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and your data is being bought, sold, leased, used, traded over and over every single day, and we get nothing for it. So I want to solve that problem and basically create a universal basic income out of thin air. I know I'm going way up, but I want to create basically a universal basic income through using and asking permission to use your data on our platforms. So I'm trying to build a multiple platform system that will eventually take on the tech oligarchs like Google and Facebook and TikToks and all those things that are basically abusing your data.
Okay, so do you mind breaking it down? Because we all hear data. I'm sure it makes total sense to you. But if I hear a video about data, like, could you break down what data is on like the fundamental aspect?
So data's on each individual is what they would call like a data point. So they might have like, your credit score, your financial situation. Like they might know if you're in foreclosure. They might know if, just put it this way. If you go and watch The Great Hack on Netflix, it goes into Cambridge Analytica scandal that basically helped swing multiple elections all over the world. They had, at that point in time, over 5,500 data points on every single voting age American in the country, right? So 5,500 data points. Imagine, so that they didn't focus on people that they knew were Republicans, and they didn't focus on people who they knew were Democrats. They focused on targeting. The algorithm was strictly targeted on people who the algorithm considered on the fence. And that's how they convinced the population to move to one side or the other, right? So information is the key to controlling a population in general. Like information warfare has been around for ages. And that's kind of what data is. That's the reason now, like when you talk about things and you're like, oh, it pops up on my phone, like, oh, they're listening to me. Well, yeah, actually they are listening to you. They're listening to you, they're tracking you, they're following you. They know, they basically know everything about you that maybe you don't even know about yourself. So that's what's being bought and sold every single day, which is, it's creepy nonetheless. But we all know it's happening, or most people know that it's happening, and we don't care because we get to connect with our friends on social media. It's like, okay, so yeah, I'll sign this 6,000 page terms of service agreement that no one's going to read, that basically sells my soul to Facebook and say, here you go, take all my data, right? Whereas what I want to build is a transparent system that says, hey, we want to use your data, yes, but we want it directly from you without doing all these using all these cookies and tracking you all these different places. We want to hear from you directly. And in return, we're going to give advertisers access to that data. It's going to be anonymized. I think that's anonymity. You're going to keep your anonymity. Sorry, I struggle with those words sometimes. But you'll keep your anonymity, so no advertisers won't know who you are directly, but we can put everything into a pool. And in that pool, you'll get, every time your data is accessed, you get compensated for it because they're going to pay us. So the advertisers are going to get clean data on exactly the target demographics they want to hit. And in return, we're going to take a piece of that and give it back as a transparent and fair way to compensate you for access to that data.
Similar how YouTube, TikTok,
yeah, same
Instagram,
way they pay creators, right?
They'll pay creators for the views. You're just going to pay them just to be on the platform.
Yeah, I mean, creators will still get paid.
Yes.
But so will users. There's the term is, what is the product's free, you're the product. So if Facebook and TikTok and all that stuff is free, that means you're the product.
So does that mean you're just going to be taking a portion of the ad revenue and distributing it to the platform?
Yes.
Okay, so you'd pretty much be paying everyone who is a user on your platform a small dividend, pretty much, just for being there.
Correct.
That's interesting.
And that dividend can be used to either reinvest into the company, it can be exchanged for goods and services, it can be sent to your buddies, all that stuff.
Do you know how much percent you're going to be giving back? 1% to you, or is that just that's just a?
No, I want to give 60%.
60%.
Yeah.
Interesting. So Facebook did 50+ billion last year. Mm-hmm. So you'd redistribute that pretty much to everyone.
Yeah.
If it got to that big.
Yeah, it's got to get to that big. Right? But I mean, this is the thing. Would you join a platform that pays you?
Heck yeah.
Just for existing and
I'm
using the platform?
I'm working really hard I'm paying to get paid right now. I'm paying in ad revenue, editors, everything.
Right. Well, how big is this market? Is it a billion, trillion?
Oh, it's trillions.
Trillions.
Yeah, it's trillions. I mean, Facebook alone's ad revenue was like 86 billion, but you're not talking about like that. So Facebook back in the day got popped for a lot of their third-party data that they had implemented, which if you were advertising back then,
it was gold.
It was gold. It was so good.
It's creepy.
Yeah, but then all that stuff people started finding out about it, and Congress had that whole hearing and everything, and they had to remove a lot of that stuff. A lot of that hearing was because of the Cambridge Analytica scandal. So when they removed that, things got harder. And then when iOS 14 or 15 came out that, asked that not the track, you want to talk about a hit? Like Facebook took a huge hit. All these companies took a huge hit. So I realized very quickly that you have one side of the aisle and you have the other side of the aisle. Apple is actually one of those companies that I actually respect because they take privacy very seriously, although they've had some of their own issues in the past. They're at least ahead of the game to the point now to where if you're texting people as part of your marketing platform and you just cold text somebody, their platform, basically iOS 16, now has a little thing at the bottom. Is like, is this spam? And you can click it, and you'll never hear from that number again because they won't ever be able to reach you. So it's automatically predicting, like, somebody trying to reach you in a spammy kind of way. So not only do you have Apple, you have other carriers. So a lot of people are getting on this bandwagon. Cookies are about to be eliminated from Google. That's going to take a huge amount of retargeting traffic away from a lot of advertisers. So they're having to figure out new ways. And the only way that I know is by trading something of value, right?
That's interesting.
Can you tell everybody what retargeting is in the audience who might not know that?
So retargeting is very simple. So say you're on Amazon, you're looking at a pair of shoes, and then the next thing you know, you're reading a news article and that same pair of shoes is popping up trying to get you to buy it. They're just tracking you from one platform to the other. So those ads are shown to you because you've shown interest in something or you visited a website. So a lot of times if you go to a website and you realize all of a sudden now you start seeing all their ads everywhere you go, that's retargeting. And you can do that from as little as just a page visit or an action on that page. So if they came to my page and just visited, then I can say, I just want to target them with this ad for the next 30 days, 60 days, or however long. if I took an action, like I filled out a form or I clicked on something, well, if they click this button, that means they're interested in this product or this service. I'm going to send them a different type of ad based on the actions that they took. That's retargeted.
It can go as far as you even opening an email too.
Yeah, open an email, right. The actions you took inside of that email, did you forward it to somebody? Did you reply to somebody?
That's how I actually blew up on Facebook and in my real estate business at 20, 21 years old, because Facebook ads were so cheap, and Zillow ads were like $2, $3K a month to get leads.
Yep.
And I was recreating those $50, $60, $70 leads for like $2.50, $3
Yep.
with Facebook lead form ads, which would pull their first name, last name, phone number, and email address straight from their Facebook and send it over to my CRM, which would send out a text, send out an email. And then once they went to my website, I would follow them around for 6 months. And I just wanted to hit people from every form of marketing: text, email, Facebook posts, Facebook ads, Instagram posts. They were seeing me everywhere.
So that's back then, man. It was
it was evil. I used to dark marketing hacks right here. I would run an ad towards people that Facebook thought were about to get a divorce.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, how do they know that? And then people who were currently going through a divorce, it was, let me sell your home. And then after they were divorced, it was, hey, are you looking for a new home ad? And it was like 20 different campaigns going for each different type of demographic for every life scenario that would revolve around buying a house. Just got out of college, learn how to buy your first house for almost no money down.
Yeah.
And you can't do that nowadays based off, you used to be able to run ads for credit score, your demographic, what neighborhood you lived in, what pages you liked on Facebook, and you could get detailed.
So who regulates all of that? Like you say, you can't run cookies anymore. You can't do all that stuff anymore. Who regulates that?
A lot of that's from legislation.
Really?
Yeah, a lot of that's from GDPR over in Europe. So like a lot of times things happen on a big scale in another country that have enough users and enough impact that causes a company to entirely change the way they do business, right? So if America introduces a legislation, which we typically don't because we have lobbyists here, if we introduce a system and introduce something into the platform or into the legislation that makes somebody have to be compliant to, which we've had several that are reason we have the ASCAP, NOTS to track, and all stuff like that have happened that cause the entire industry basically to shift. The first one that I can think of is Can Spam Act, which we were talking about downstairs earlier, which is all about the email marketing. Email marketing, when emails came out, was the Wild Wild West. Just like AI will be the Wild Wild West, just like texting and cold calling was the Wild Wild West for a minute for marketing. You're going to have these periods of time to where you're going to have a short window to take advantage of a new technology or a new platform to be able to go and like make a ton of money really fast. But what happens is you get a lot of people who abuse those systems. So when the email, you would have people who would download millions of emails and put it on a CD-ROM drive. Back then you could upload it and then literally start sending emails blindly, coldly. Well, now because of the Can Spam Act and because of Google and a bunch of other different mail companies or email companies that have now basically figured out how they can block somebody from cold emailing you, we have the Can Spam Act. And that's when I first learned about permission marketing. And that's why this whole conversation even has been started, and the whole idea that I've had around how do we give value back to somebody who's obviously providing value to our company. Because without users, what's Facebook? How much are they worth?
0.
Exactly. So if they don't have people going to their what's reasons all this AI stuff is such a huge deal for Google, and the reason TikTok's such a big threat to Facebook is because of the fact that if their adoption rate is down and their users are down, which TikTok just got, or Google just got dethroned for the most search visits, site visits by TikTok, that's a big deal. It's a huge red flag. Now add that on top of the amount of people who are no longer using search and using ChatGPT, it's a big deal and it's a big hit to their revenue. So you have to have users, and the only way that I can think of to make something valuable and reason enough for somebody who would want to come to a platform like the one I want to build is, well, we compensate you, right? You're giving us value by being a user, by contributing, by being on the platform, by interacting with our ads. You're providing value to us as a user. So why not share in some of that profit? Why not share in some of that visibility that we have?
All right, so now let's go deeper down the rabbit hole. You just mentioned Chat GPT, which is all over the internet. Everybody and their brother knows it now. You've already missed the wave if you're just now finding out about it.
No, dude, there's still people who haven't used it.
The wave's already like the wave's about to start barreling. Everybody and their brother's doing automated Instagram posts, blog posts with it now. Where do you see the future with Chat GPT? That's a hard question.
It's not even necessarily with just Chat GPT. So it's AI in general or generative AI.
Let's keep it on Chat GPT. Do they have to monetize it, or do you think they're going to get more strict with it, or do you think the capabilities are just going to become just far too great to even miss out on?
So there's already been the rumors of GPT-4. GPT-4 is just a little backstory. I've been using GPT-3 products since 2020.
Okay.
So I had Jasper, so I use it to help me write ads and stuff like that. I actually used to take it because I was a member of this platform that gave you a website called Carrot. They do websites for investors and agents, but they give you blogs. Their team builds out like every day. They're putting out like 3 or 4 different content packs that you can just go take, throw it on your website. Well, what happens is if everyone does that, well, then everyone's got the same content. So you need to change it up. So I used to just take that information, dump it into Jasper, which used to be called Conversion.ai, and it would just reformat it and basically tell the same story but in a different way. So that's what I was using it for. ChatGPT entered the chat room, which is built on GPT-3. It entered in November. I was already on the waiting list beforehand because I've been playing around with Dolly and Midjourney and stuff like that. And when it came into play, I was like, that really kind of made my mind go, all right, so I know what's possible now when it comes to like what I can build on their platform, because at first it was very limited niche kind of ideas, like, oh, we can text to create an image, or, oh, you can take text and make it better sounding and make it sound like like a copywriter wrote it. By using Jasper. So like there was all these other tools that were using GPT-3 that were just kind of serving a niche platform, whereas ChatGPT really just opened the doors for everyone to understand, like, okay, this is really what's happening, this is really what's possible. And from there I was like, chatbots are the next thing. Everybody's like, if you are an assistant that takes phone calls or answers texts and emails in somebody's business, you better be looking for another job or either learning how to use AI, because it's almost same with attorneys. Like, you're always going to need somebody to be the speaker, get up and litigate for you. But as far as legal research and things like that, those jobs are gone. Like, I think 60% of the workforce, according to the World Economic Forum, they believe by 2025, over 54% of the population will either have to be upskilled or retrained.
I believe that.
Yeah.
I think that number is probably low too.
Yeah. So that's the future right now. So my objective is to tell everyone is like, look, you need to be learning some way, somehow, to get involved in AI. And if you don't know how, start with ChatGPT. There's tons of other platforms out there, but like ChatGPT is free to use. Literally ask it anything.
Ask it, teach me how to use AI.
Right.
And put it on a 5th grade reading level.
Yep.
That's been my key lately. I've been saying at the end of each of my emails that I have it generate, everything that I say, the last line says, make this a 5th grade reading level. Mm-hmm. And if it's a content-based command, I say, spice this up a little bit, or make it more controversial, or make it sound less like a robot. Simple commands.
Oh, yeah.
Just make it just so much easier to use.
I mean, I've already seen a $250,000 a year prompt engineering job. Yeah. So learning the future. So what I really wanted to get into when you were talking about, I was like, well, the future of AI. The future of AI is just as simple as if you can describe something, you can create it. And while that's very broad, it's meant to be very broad. What's happening is that eventually you'll be able to change the ending to the movie simply by just entering some text.
Yes.
Right then and there, because the computer has everything it needs. It has the image.
Yes.
It understands language and understands how to change the language. So you can take a rated R movie and make it into a PG-13 movie. You can take a PG-13 and change it into a PG, or vice versa. Or you can have it start talking Spanish, and not only will it not look overdubbed, it will literally, their facial expressions and everything will change in real time.
Yeah, 11 labs, and I believe it's Synthesia now.
Yeah.
You can create an entire avatar that looks just like you, sounds just like you,
Yeah.
and you would not be able to tell the difference.
Yeah, no, you just start typing and it starts speaking like you.
Me and another guy who was a very wealthy individual, but he was a little bit older, we were talking the other night, and I let him play with this, and I told him, I was like, me, you, and the 5 smartest people you know could sit in a room and think for an entire day taking notes. We wouldn't even be able to use 1/1,000,000th of the power of this technology.
No.
There's no physical way we're all smart enough to even grasp an iota of how powerful this is.
So we were talking about GPT-4. I got sidetracked there. GPT-4 is supposedly going to have like 100 trillion parameters that they're saying that's a rumor. Even if it's a trillion parameters, right now GPT-3 is like 137 billion parameters. But if it comes out to be even relatively true, it'll have more synapses than in the human brain.
Right.
So literally it can think quicker than the human brain can quick, which is absolutely mind-blowing to think about. But the thing that I want to make sure that most people would understand, though, about what ChatGPT is, it's not that it's smarter than you. It just has access to the information and is able to calculate it at a much quicker pace, in the sense of, like, I'm not having to go and search. So it's a large language model, right?
Yeah.
So all that is doing is it's just no different than when you're texting on your phone and the next word pops up. That's it. It's just predicting the next word at a much faster pace than what your phone is. And eventually they're going to be able to get those file sizes down to where now they're like around 900 gigabytes to run the program. There's a company called Stability AI. That's the founders of Stable Diffusion and a bunch of other different platforms that are coming out. They're basically kind of open sourcing large language models and building out all kinds of cool projects. But they're eventually getting it down to a 2 gigabyte file, to where now you have a large language model installed on every single phone.
It's 1/500th of the, wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, and they're able to generate images in 0.9 seconds now, like from text to generate. So their goal
is like a 15-20 second like loading time.
Right. So their goal is to get it real time. You hit enter and it's there. And at that point, you can real time map out and build anything you want. They're already building. You can literally take a text description and build an entire game.
So, getting a little bit deeper into this.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Sorry, I nerd out on AI.
No, you're speaking my language right now. Eventually, you'll be able to probably link this with Neuralink, painting a picture, if that ever becomes a thing. And you won't even have to type anything out. You could literally just think it and have somebody's dreams be recorded onto an actual screen.
Yeah.
Theoretically, of course. It could get to the point to where you think it and it will exist.
You're correct.
We're not that far away from that, you would say.
I mean, that
within
level,
20 years.
I'm gonna say that level probably 20 years. Yeah,
but that's not a long time compared to 20 years ago.
No, it's not a long time. I mean, let me ask you this: How do you think we live in a simulation?
Oh man, come on.
Yeah, it's okay to say I don't know.
Okay, so it would make sense if we were. I don't think we are, but
would it make more sense or less?
It would probably make more sense because, you know, I was a firm believer we're living in a simulation after they convinced us as Americans to wear 2 masks and just broadcast that on the internet. No, I'm just joking. At that point, I was like, this isn't real life. Somebody's trolling us right now. But, oh, man, that's a hard one.
It is a hard one. Truth is, I don't know. I'll lean more to yes.
It wouldn't shock me. Like, if somebody gave me cold, hard proof and said, we're living in a simulation, here's the facts, I would say, you know, that at this point in time, that would not surprise me.
But here's the difference is, like, whether we are or we're not, and people getting caught up on certain topics and ideas and opinions is part of the problem in general. It's like, I just focus on me and myself and what I'm working to improve on every single day. And I go and live my life and try to leave others' opinions and others' concepts of who I am and what I do or any of that stuff. None of that shit matters. Right? That's the biggest breakthrough. If you're young and you're listening right now and say you're not Mr. Popularity in high school, the biggest thing you need to break out of is giving 2 shits what anybody else thinks about you.
Ooh.
Like, that's it. By far, if it makes you happy, do it. Right? As long as it doesn't interfere with other people's lives or their finances, what does it matter? Right? Have fun, live your life, live your truth, find your tribe, choose your vibe.
How'd you overcome that? Was there any moment in your life where you're like, you know what, I got to stop caring about these people?
I mean, I took a lot of risks very early. I didn't know very much. I grew up in a very small backwoods town. Loved where I grew up. Had some amazing friends, but like there was just nothing there for me. I left at like 19, moved to Chicago, and wanted to work for a record label. I took a chance because I met a record label executive that said, "Don't go to school for 4 years in music business. Go work in a city where a label was at for 4 years, promoting shows, meeting bands, networking. You'll learn way more doing that than you ever will going and get a music business degree." So I took his advice whenever baseball didn't pan out, and I was like, I'm going to go to Chicago. I'm going to go work for Victory Records. And I beat down the doors and eventually led to a street team position, and moving fast forward, it got me into marketing and to where I am now. But ultimately, like, that was a big chance. And like a lot of people talk about me leaving and how they had opinions and all this other stuff. But where I'm at now, I'll be honest, like my wife has always kind of lived that way. And I was the one in the background, like she would be sharing stuff and be like, I don't know if I'd say it that way, or maybe I would change that. But watching her like completely own who she is and seeing how that's transpired into her business and her relationships and our relationship has made me open up and really kind of like see the other side of things. Like, you know what, really and truly, like, and obviously having a little bit of money helps too. Not caring what other people think, because not everyone's going to be for you, right? Not everyone's meant to be for you. There's this old saying, like, if you try to please everyone, you end up losing your ass. That's exactly true. You can't please everyone, so why try? So let's focus on what I enjoy doing, focus on how I can help people do what they love, and focus on doing what I love. And that's all I care about.
Boom. That's good stuff. Let's stay here on Philo for a minute. Would you say you're a confident guy?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say I'm confident. I mean, I deal with imposter syndrome just like everyone else. I have my days. I mean, for the last 2 years, I'm not going to lie, it was rough. I came here, thought I was going to immediately spin up another 6-figure-a-month business, get going. We were rolling in that direction, and then, you know, boom, 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 contractor after this, everything started going wrong. I took hits, and I'd never taken hits before like that. So it took me a second. That's really when, thankfully, because my wife's such a total badass, her business is doing her businesses are doing extremely well. She was like, "Look, what do you really want to do?" I was like, "You know, I mean, I'm really good at real estate. I understand it. I love structuring deals. I love helping people with their problems when it comes to real estate. But I hate the day-to-day of it. I hate going and trying to find people to come to work, and I hate doing all those things." And I was like, I'd much rather just focus, take some time and really focus on building some of these projects I've been ideating on for the last several years, and just see where it goes. She was like, "Well, I got the ship. If you can do that," she's like, "Go do that." So that's ultimately where I like her is a bigger reason why, number one, I've been able to focus on my passions a lot more and actually do what I say I wanted to do, and number two, not really give a shit about what anybody else thinks.
Damn, that's awesome. Do you want to touch on your wife for a minute? You mind talking about that? Because I think that's something we've touched on in the past few podcasts, that having that partner is such a pivotal piece to success. Huge piece to success.
So we were actually both from the same small hometown. She was in law school in South Carolina. I followed her out there because it didn't really matter where I lived. I traveled for work. So I would, I'd pop in every so often here and there. And I knew she was going to go to school to become a lawyer. She wanted to work for a massive corporate firm, right? She wanted to go. I was like, I don't think you're going to like that. You're going to work 80, 90 hours a week. Like, yeah, they're going to pay you probably $150,000 or $200,000 a year, but you're not going to have any of your time. She went and interviewed, didn't get the job. I was like, all right, let's just move home because we have a solid network there. I was like, let's move home. I'll continue doing real estate, and we'll get you a job there. Went to all the title companies because in my mind, I saw, well, I mean, I'm an investor. It'd make no sense for you not to do real estate law. It's like, so went to all the firms there. They all said they weren't busy enough to hire anybody. So then when I found out that we were 50% of one of the companies in town's business one of the months, I was like, well, that's enough. Like, we're just going to open your own. I thought that was going to be easy because, she passed the bar, she has her license, she passed law school. No, the insurance companies didn't feel comfortable with her writing policies. So we went through 3 different insurance companies who all led us down this month-long journey of yeah, we're approving you, yada, 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 and then get to the end sorry, we can't do anything. So in the meantime, I bought a house for cash, was remodeling it, and paid for our wedding which was super awesome, and honeymoon and all that stuff. So like all this money I was made in South Carolina, I was trying to keep that business going from afar. It ultimately failed because I couldn't be in two places at once. I thought I had a good enough system in place to keep things going, but I was spending $10,000 a month in advertising there, just in Google Ads. So it doesn't take long if things aren't moving the right way. I was like, all right, I'd cut it. I was like, gone. I'm gonna need to focus on just Mississippi. I'm much better in person than I am trying to do things over the phone. So from there, we finally got somebody that would let her write title policies. She had to write under somebody. They told her it was going to be 2 years before she could have write her own policies. Within 6 months, she was doing enough business, and we were doing enough business together because we built up our network. We were hosting networking meetups and going to networking meetups. Within 6 months, she had enough. They let her start writing on her own, and I think she did just $120-something thousand in 4 years. Short of seven figures. So she was $120,000 last year on that one business from $1 million business. And we're looking at opening a third location in Louisiana by year 5. So by the end of this year, we should have a third location. And that's strictly from her also seeing like what I was able to accomplish, then also supporting her through that decision, helping her kind of overcome a lot of those things. So we work really well together, but she's helped me a lot. Also understands like, you know, at the end of the day, if you ain't, feeding or financing, your opinion doesn't matter. And even then it's weighted.
That's deep.
That's heavy.
That's some deep stuff. Okay, well, staying on this topic, you have a podcast with your wife. What is that about? I saw the name was Dinks. You mind explaining that?
Man, that hit me for a curveball. I was like, what kind of name is that? What does that mean? I was just thinking that, like, I listened to a little bit of it. I was like, I thought it was going to be like a comedy one at first. I was like, all right.
So if you want to know one thing about my wife and I is like we're not the traditional couple in the sense of like you know, it wasn't get married, have kids, you know, all this other stuff. Like we had goals, we have aspirations, we had businesses we wanted to build, we had things we wanted to do and things we wanted to see. So Dinks has been an idea for a podcast for several years until I finally convinced her to do it with me, and it stands for Dual Income, No Kids. It's been around for quite a while, but the first time I heard it was one of my friends about 3 years ago. He goes, "Oh, y'all just dinks. Y'all have," because he had kids, and he was like, "Y'all are always going and doing things. Like, you know, I got kids, so I can't go and do that stuff." And COVID locked down, and we kind of got the baby bug, and then she had a little bit of a cancer scare, and that really kind of set us back on like planning on having a baby. And then COVID lifted, and we started traveling a little bit more. And I was like, "Hey, you know what? Like, I forgot about how cool this was. We could just kind of go anytime we wanted to go." And we have a duplex, and my brother-in-law and his niece, my nieces and nephews live next door, so like there's kids always around. So like getting a taste of like what that parenthood is like was like, okay, that's good enough birth control for me, and also for her. So like I think our goal is, you know, maybe in 5 years we'll revisit, but like I don't, you know, we have a lot of societal pressures from families and friends and everything else. Oh, you know, when you're all going to have a baby, and also, well, you know, you don't want to wait too long and all this other stuff. And it's like, you know, it's if I have a kid, great. If I don't, that's okay too. As long as it's me and her and we get to go and explore life together and do life together, that's all I really care about.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's let's touch on one thing. I just heard you say the word we've never really touched on the podcast. You said societal pressures.
Yeah.
I think that's something that is huge that everybody deals with. It's not often talked about. Do either of y'all have any like tidbits of game on societal pressers and like how to deal with that?
Towards relationships or just in life in general?
Just in life in general, because everybody's got something to say about you based off where you're at geographically. We're all over the place, but nobody really talks about it. I mean, we're in the South. Very
simple. If you're not feeding, the other F word I'm not going to say, or financing, you don't get an opinion. It doesn't matter, right? Other people's opinions of you and expectations of you do not matter. Your expectations of yourself is the only thing that's limiting yourself. That's it. You can achieve anything you want to achieve if you truly go for it and you're truly passionate about it and you're consistent. Consistency is the biggest part of that. You have to actually take action on it.
That one of my downfalls is I process all the criticism, the positivity really deeply. So when I hear people talk bad about me, it doesn't faze me, but if it's people that I'm close to, then it really hits me.
Oh, it does. Yeah, it will
it hits me. It's not gonna change the course of my life though. If anything, a lot of the negative talk is actually going to help me. It's going to be workout fuel. It's going to be I have to now prove you wrong kind of conversation.
Yeah.
I try to take control of my own life. I like how he says the triple Fs. You know, if you're not feeding, effing, or financing.
I mean, I've never heard that before, but it's pretty simple.
Yeah, I'm going to keep that one. You mind if I borrow that from you?
Well, I got another one for you too. If it flies, floats, or it's cheaper to rent.
Ooh. Ooh, you're hurting my soul right now. Ooh.
That was an old one. I got that from an old rich dude. He's like, yeah, man, if it flies, floats, or fucks, it's cheaper to rent.
That's gonna save somebody 7 figures. You should live by those 2 phrases, and you'll have a happy life.
But I mean, ultimately, man, it really just comes down to like blocking out a lot of the noise. You're going to fail, like no matter what you do in life. Like that one definite thing is like no matter what you try, you're going to screw something up. I failed a lot. I'm sure both of you have failed at different things or had some failures or setbacks in your life. And if you haven't, it's coming.
It's coming.
Yeah. It's how you react to that failure and what you do that defines ultimately like what you go on to achieve. And I'm in the middle of basically a resurgence, right? Like I had a failed partnership and moved here and had a couple failed flips and failed side projects that cost me a lot of money. But at the end of the day, it's like, it's just money. And I regret more the time that I wasted on things than I do about how much money I lost.
Let's touch on the partnership, because that's something that we've been taught. Justin keeps saying, what, you can't do business with, you got to be friends to do business or something?
Friends can do business. People that are not friends cannot do business.
So do you mind giving us a little bit of insider on that partnership, what panned out?
So yeah, so partnerships, be very treat them like a marriage, because it is a marriage. Ultimately, like by the time everything's said and done, you may lose half your shit or more, right? So, and you have to, if you're going to go into partnership with somebody, you have to start with an end in mind, right? So you have to think about what are the worst possible, even though everything's great and we love each other and we're all friends and like we're just full of energy and we're having a good time. Like at any point in time, something can happen. People's lives change, and that's normal, right? So I don't regret anything that we ever did together. We built a massive audience. We had a lot of fun. We changed a lot of people's lives, and we built a really cool business off of it. And I learned a lot, not just from him, but his dad. So like, I have no regrets about the partnership. But things happen. People's lives change. What people wants and desires, those things change and evolve over time, right? It just happens naturally. So starting with, if you're going to form a partnership, the one thing I wish I would have done was to start with something with an end in mind. Like, hey, if something happens, not just you dying, but like if something happens and we have a change in mentality or a change in heart, or we don't agree on something, what does that look like? Sit down and have those hard conversations early and have it on paper, so you're not having to figure out everything over the course of months or over the course of lawsuits. I would say that.
That's probably good advice.
Yeah.
Same thing with real estate. Everything's on paper.
Yeah.
Everything. There's no verbal.
Yeah. And then there's a clear ending on every single contract, right?
No
so a partnership should be no different. It's no different than a prenup in a marriage, right? If you're a multimillionaire and you're getting married to somebody who doesn't necessarily have any money, well, obviously they're going to have a prenup, right? And it's going to spell out everything that happens in case of a divorce.
That's good stuff. My wheels are turning. I'm like trying to think of the next question. Also process
I've
that.
I've got one. Tell us about networking for you right now. How is your work and friend life balance? Because that's something that everyone struggles with that we've brought on the podcast, and everybody I know in general. Being an entrepreneur, you almost, it's a struggle to find balance, because you're either 100 miles an hour working, 100 miles an hour as a partner, 100 miles an hour as a friend. It's hard to be everywhere at once. It's
extremely hard. And you're going to, also, if you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to lose a lot of friends. You're probably going to lose some family too. It's just the nature of it. It happens. And it's nothing you did or they did. It has a lot to do with their mentality versus yours. But balance can be difficult, right? Especially when you're really, truly passionate about something. Because every day I wake up when I work on stuff is like, I don't feel like I'm working. Like, I enjoy waking up in the morning. I enjoy going to the office. He can tell you when I walked into the office this morning, I was like, let's go. And then I just sat down and, got on my computer and started working, and we just kind of chatted back and forth. But like, I'm excited to wake up. And that balance for me is number one, prioritizing my wife, because ultimately she's my best friend. She's my guidepost for a lot of things. So I'm making sure that every single day. I had this at one point in time, just to back up just a second. I tried to do 12 things every single day. I fail at them all the time. Matter of fact, I haven't wrote them down in a long time. But when I was doing them, I was doing a really good job of it. And then it kind of felt like I was just doing it just to, but I try to keep some of those 12 principles in my mind and try to do them on a daily basis. One of those was make sure the wife is, I do something nice for the wife, even if it's just something that's like cooking or whatever, or helping clean up the house, whatever the case may be. Like I try to do something nice for her every single day. The other one's to reach out to a friend. That's not a business network, like just a friend. That's somebody I like to talk to. Whether it's just texting and saying, hey, just thought about you today. Hope you're doing all right. Let me know if you need anything. Let's catch up soon. The other one's reach out to a family member, and the other one's to reach out to a business contact, right? So the other things that I focus on is like, how do I'm trying to think of the 12 here. So like family, faith. So whether you're religious or not, like to try to do something within that realm of, whether it's affirmations or whatever, or meditating. Faith, family, so I reach out to family. Finance, what can I do today to make or save some money, right? It's not always about making money. Can I do something, can I cut something out that I don't need? But those 12, writing those 12 down every single day, I'll have to get you the list, but I write those down. I used to write them down every single day, but I hold on to some of those, and that kind of helps me balance things. But ultimately, I just choose to surround myself with people who are on kind of the same wavelength and are all moving in the same direction. And once we do that, it's like there's not really much balance that I need to worry about because me and my wife are both building. If we surround ourselves with people who are building and growing and can contribute, and we can all contribute to one another, then there's not really much balance that I need to find. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, it's like if I wanted to sit home all day, every day, and do nothing, I could. Because my wife makes enough money that I could do that right now.
Stay-at-home dad.
Yeah, I can be stay-at-home dad. But I'm not. I'm driven to do more because I want to do more, not because I have to.
Yeah.
And when you reach that point, it's kind of weird to think about like work-life balance. But when you're in the thick of it and you're in the grind, like you're going to have to spend some hours like just figuring it all out. And you're going to have people that tell you like, man, you got to find some balance. Focus on you, right? Focus on you and what's important to you. I feel like anyone that always makes the excuse of like, I don't have enough time for something, is just saying that I don't value that enough to make time for it.
I don't prioritize that.
Right. So my wife is top of my priority list. If she called me right now and said, hey, I need you, I'm like, hey guys, podcast is over.
Respect.
Yeah. That's just the way it goes. Right.
It's your non-negotiable.
And it could be something that as simple as like, hey, I just need you to go and pick this up, but I can't do it, but you need to do it. Like I'll ask her, like, can I do it in like 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever? But like if she calls, I'm there. Whereas, if you call me and say that, and it's not,
Yeah.
not because we might be the best of friends soon, but like it's where my priorities lie, right?
100%.
So as long as your priorities are where they need to be, and like you're going to be fine with your work-life balance. Number one, again, it's always comes back to my wife.
Okay.
That's really good advice.
Let's just push a little bit more into this. You talked about all that. Why are you doing all that? What's your why at the end of the day?
So my why at the end of the day is I hate greed. I don't like greed. I think greed eats the chicken or kills the chicken and eats the eggs, right? And when you do that, you cannibalize everything around it. And what I mean by that is like the Googles and the Facebooks and the TikToks, all these products and services that have free platforms are using us as products, not as users, right? They treat us like products. They take our data, which is obviously a valuable asset, and they use it, and they give us nothing in return other than entertainment. So my entire goal is to revolutionize the way we treat data and the way we look at like how people interact on the internet. So like I want to go after how we shop on the internet. I want to go out how our data is used. I want to build platforms that empower people to control their identity, control their data, and choose whether or not they want to be tracked or not, right? Be able to be as transparent as possible. Radical transparency is something that we haven't hit on. That's also one of the things that I read in the book, Your Next 5 Moves. It's Patrick Bet-David. Great book, by the way.
Great author.
Number one thing that I picked up from that entire book was radical transparency. Completely be transparent in everything that you do. And we don't have that on the internet right now. So I hate people who lie. I hate people who steal. I hate people who cheat. And I hate people who are greedy.
Dang, that's deep. That lines up with our entire like motto as a podcast. That's pretty cool to hear. Like what we're doing, in case you didn't know, is like we are trying to be transparent. Let the public know everything about the back end. That's why when we interview people like you, we try and dig deep to get you to tell like the good and the bad.
Yeah, there's a lot of fluff out there. It's easy. Everyone puts their best self on the internet, right? Nobody wants to talk about how bad things can get. And that's okay. Like, you don't necessarily have to share everything about every bad detail that's ever happened to you. Just keep things positive. But like, I can't stand. Like, I've been around the industry long enough to where I see all these gurus pop up and disappear, and pop up and disappear, and pop up and disappear. And some of them actually gain traction, and I hear some of them talk. I was like, dude, you have no idea what you're talking about. But because you're charismatic and you're putting yourself out there, like, people are handing over money. And then they're getting screwed. And I can't stand to see people get screwed over because they believed in, something. And now all of a sudden it's a misnomer that, like, oh yeah, you can make a lot of money in real estate with none of your own money. It's like, yes, actually you can. But because so many people ruined it for so many other people, like, trying to tell somebody that you can literally start with nothing, literally nothing other than maybe $100, $50, $10, whatever, and go make and create a 5, 10, 15, or even $100,000 spread on something, with just understanding that lack of money is rarely ever a real problem. It's the lack of creative thinking that's the problem. We put ourselves inside of a box, and that box says everything has to be done a certain way. I try to live outside of that box and say, like, what can I do, or what is the ways that I can solve this problem that doesn't necessarily involve money? I look at everything like, how can I solve it without money?
Oh my God.
Or how can I solve it with somebody else's money?
Run that back and rewind that again. Go back about 45 seconds. That's awesome. Shoot.
That's strong. That's very strong. So, man, that is a lot to digest. Ooh, we got gold right now. Tell us, can you, because I keep on saying friends can do business, people that are not friends cannot do business. Do you believe in that?
I disagree. I'll just say, first off, before you say yours, I disagree.
I think friends can do business because they have the best intentions for each other, and everybody can win in that scenario. But people that are not friends with malicious intent in the background are always going to be out for themselves.
I try to have more of an optimistic approach than most people, which is also why I've been burned a lot. But it's okay. Like, I call those seminars, right? Like, you're gonna make mistakes. You're gonna lose some money occasionally. It's just a $5,000 seminar or a $100 seminar. You choose, right? So be very, very conservative whenever you're doing anything with investments. But I don't know. It's a real tough one for me because, me and my former partner, we were friends before we were partners. Mm-hmm. Like I said, like, things change. I think ultimately at the end of the day, there's very few partnerships that have lasted for, decades or even longer than decades. So I think ultimately just about every partnership comes to an end, and everyone has their own desires and wants and needs, as long as each other are capable of being radically transparent with one another and saying what's really going on, what's really on their minds, versus tiptoeing around things. The minute you start tiptoeing around issues and problems in your business is the minute you're going to have, it's going to be the day that you have massive problems in your business. So everyone has to be willing to say, hey, look, I screwed up, or you're screwed up, or this is screwing up, without blowing up at each other. How do we fix it? We have to fix it together. So I think partners can be friends. Yes, I think you can build great business as friends. I think it's better to do it as friends. Just realize that it's very unlikely that it's going to be the end game.
Okay.
For anybody.
I can respect that.
Yeah. I've seen enough partnerships kind of come and go in the realm of things, but just knowing that, being very clear, because I'm sure what you want out of life is probably aligns with a lot that he wants out of life, but it's your life, right? It's your vision. It's what you want to do when you wake up in the morning every day.
100%.
His is going to be a little bit different. Might be a lot of the same, but it's going to be a little bit different.
100%.
I think it's important to know that getting into it, like, hey, this is probably not going to work out. It's not going to mean it's going to come to a bitter end.
No.
Not all partnerships come to a bitter end, but like, hey, what do you ultimately see as, what are we doing with this? What this podcast, for instance, like, what are the goals of the podcast? How many followers does it have? How many subscribers does it have? How many people, how many events are you guys speaking at? Right? Because eventually at some point in time, I mean, this thing could get so big that you guys are traveling all around the country every single day speaking on stages. And at first you said, that's exactly what I want. Being paid hundreds of thousands to motivate and help people. And then he goes like, hey man, like my wife wants a kid and I can't be on the road 200 plus days a year. What does that look like?
No, I can respect that 100%.
Right?
That's a whole different animal though.
Yeah.
Life on the road is not easy.
No, it's not. It sounds fun, and it is fun. Don't get me wrong. You learn. Travel is the best education you can get in life. I firmly believe that. If you travel and get around people from different backgrounds, different demographics, understand how different people work and think and act, you learn a lot more than you learn in most schools.
So before we go back and use Justin's time machine question, you'll figure that out in a second. Let's talk about the future. What is Brent Moreno going to be doing here in the next few months, years?
So we're creating a lot of content in the area, kind of like you guys. We own What's Happening in Gulf Shores page. I don't know if you knew that or not. What's happening in Gulf Shores, what's happening in Fairhope, Daphne, and Baldwin County. We have those groups all kind of under our management. We want to do some ad stuff on there with some businesses. That's all kind of small stuff. We're working on some interesting partnerships currently that I can't speak of just yet, but they'll come to light soon. So, like, making content that I enjoy making is ultimately all I want to do every day. But I also have these other projects like Deal Bell and Poppin'. Deal Bell's kind of on its own. It's got its development team. I'm working to add some other features to it currently that involve AI. It'll probably be rolled out in the next 6 months, and hopefully I can have enough of it. I ultimately want to exit that business. I want to sell it because it doesn't really inspire me. It's not really exciting. And if I could focus all of my time on just figuring out how do I get Poppin' off the ground, how do I get the money that it needs, because we're not talking, I'm going to need at least $5 million, right? Just to give me a 2-year runway, and we probably won't be profitable for 5 years. So that takes a lot of planning and preparation, and also investors that understand the game when it comes to startups. Is that startup investing and VC investing is totally different than real estate. They take 20 shots hoping 2 of them pan out, because the 2 that do pan out are
100x.
Yeah, I mean they're 1,000% returns, not 20% returns. So they can have 18 losers that lost them millions of dollars, but as long as they got 2 that they have 10 million in that go and generate up 10 billion, it doesn't really matter. So it's a different game that they play. So me trying to raise the money is currently where I want to be, but in 5 years, I'm hoping that Poppin' is profitable. It's doing what I thought it could do. I wish I could share more about it, but that's
another podcast.
Yeah.
And it's private.
It's a little private right now, but like 5 years from now, I believe that it will completely reshape and replace a lot of the ways that we do business and transact and market online. That's ultimately where I want it to be, in a place where I make the internet a more fair and equitable experience for everyone.
Awesome.
You ready for it?
Yeah, go ahead. Run it.
All right. Here's my famous question. If you could go back to yourself at 18 years old and offer yourself one bit of life advice, what would it be?
At 18. I was a bit different, man, than most. Like, I actually took the chances that I wanted to take. But if I had to give my 18-year-old one piece of advice, it would spend a little more time on, or understand financing, how finance works a little bit better. Because if you guys are anything like us, like we had no financial education in high school whatsoever at all. Period. Didn't know anything about credit scores, credit cards, other than they were the devil, which is a lie. You learn how to use financing tools like credit cards to your advantage. I don't use my debit card at all for anything. Do you?
No.
You use your debit card?
Cash.
Cash? Use cash for everything?
Yeah, use cash. Use cash or credit card, no debit.
Yeah, don't use cash.
Don't use cash?
Put your cash back.
Are we opening another rabbit hole?
Sorry.
Credit card, everything.
I mean, it's really hard for me to think about what I would tell myself at 18. That's a good question.
Let me break it down a little bit.
Read Rich Dad, Poor Dad, because I think I read that at like 24, and it changes my mindset. And we're listening to Alan Watts' What If Money Didn't Exist?
Ooh, I got something for you. It's a lo-fi Alan Watts playlist.
Oh,
Where it's just-
I love Alan Watts, by the way.
yeah, it's a lo-fi. It's got some lo-fi music in the back, and it's got Alan Watts just speaking for like an hour.
So you actually, the What If Money Doesn't Exist?
I've probably listened to it.
It's only like 2.5 minutes long, and that completely reshaped my entire life. Because when you start thinking about what would you do if money didn't exist or didn't matter, right? What would you do for a living? That's a question that most people don't ever pose.
I'd be doing this right now.
Right.
Nobody enjoys this more than me.
I'm doing this right now because I want to be here,
Yeah.
right? Not because, you guys aren't paying me anything. Did I miss something?
Yet.
Right? So, like, what would you do if money didn't exist? And he goes on, he's like, well, a lot of people say, well, I would be a horse trainer. He's like, well, if you become a horse trainer, it's like if you get really good at the skill, eventually you can become a master of it, and you can charge money for it. And it goes back to, like, anything you're interested in, there's thousands of more people, and the internet makes it even easier to access those people. Over, 100,000 people bought the Pontiac, or 10,000 people bought the Pontiac Aztec.
Yeah.
It's like the ugliest vehicle ever made. That's before iPhone was even invented. So they couldn't even look at them on their phones. They had to go home and look at it online or get a magazine or whatever. Ugliest vehicles ever made, still sold over 10,000 units. All right, so anything, literally anything you're interested in, I don't care how weird or fetishy that it is, don't yuck nobody's yum, go do what you want to do, have fun, figure out a way to monetize it. Document it. Share your story. That's probably what I would say. Document it. That's probably what I would tell my 18-year-old self. Document what you're doing.
Ooh. Yeah, that was one of my biggest regrets at 18, not posting one video on YouTube a week.
Dude, I traveled the country going to Super Bowls, the biggest sporting events, the biggest music festivals for 10 years. Took a lot of cool photos, a little bit of video, but like never threw together any kind of content around it.
Mine went all to Snapchat. I have a very loyal Snapchat following, and they love me, but it was never put on an evergreen platform.
Right.
All right, well, let me go back into my golden question then. If you could go back to yourself at 18 and offer yourself one bit of advice socially now, what would that be?
Socially, what do you mean by socially?
Your friend group.
Oh, if I could give my friend group a piece of advice?
You towards your friends, like one little bit of advice that, maybe your network was your net worth, or hang out with people that were more like-minded, or cut people off a little bit earlier.
I mean, definitely. I mean, people come in seasons, right? Opportunities are everywhere, and they'll never be endless as long as you have an abundance mindset. That's one thing I would like for all my friends to understand is, like, I'm not a scarcity mindset person, so I'm not worried about filing the memorandums of contract. That's the reason
Right.
I did a bad job of getting the trust of the seller if that seller didn't feel comfortable enough going through with my offer. Right now, somebody might have came and offered them more money. Oh, this is a good one. Someone might come and offer them give more. I'll tell you one time how I got paid $20,000 to not buy a house.
Okay.
Was it simply by going back to the seller and saying, hey, we have this agreement. Obviously they come and offered you more money for the property. I can't pay that. I was like, it doesn't, I don't know what model they're running, but my numbers, my calculator says that's not a deal for me. I said, however, we're in a bit of a situation here because now I have time, money, and energy invested in this contract, and I thought we were friends. I thought we left things in good order. What am I supposed to do about that? I said, you're making X amount of dollars, $40,000 more than what I was able to offer. I said, I will tell you what I'll do. I will back out of this deal. We will still be friends. I said, but I need $20,000 that you're going to be splitting for the extra that you're getting. He was kind of all up in arms about it for a bit, and I was like, look, we can go that route, or we can go the legal
Litigation.
route, right? Litigation route. I was like, I don't want to do that. I would much rather leave on good terms and we be friends. You're already making $20,000 more than what I could offer you. So would you rather have a bird in the hand, or would you rather go down the path of, we're going to go to litigation and we're going to have to fight this out, and it's probably going to cost you more than $20,000.
$20,000.
Right.
Yes.
He says, you know what? He's like, you're actually right. He's like, he's like, you're a good guy. He's like, we'll just do that. It's okay. So I got $20,000 to not buy the house because I didn't have to worry about memorandums. I have to worry about scarcity. I'm not worried about any of those people that are trying to take things from me, because I avoid them at all costs. I just focus on what I can do to make sure that whoever I'm dealing with trusts me and we have the same respect for one another.
I like that.
Is that the end of your question? You got
I mean,
one?
I
You
got
got one more in the chamber?
Okay.
Before we end it up?
If you could go back to yourself at 18 years old and offer one little bit of advice, health-wise, what would it be?
Take better care of yourself. Don't drink so much alcohol. Alcohol's fun, but like I worked for Anheuser-Busch, so I didn't never have to pay for alcohol for a long time. But take better care of yourself, more so mentally than anything. Like because ultimately, like if you want to be fit, and I'm not like the most fit guy ever, but I've recently lost like 30 pounds in the last few months because I just made a conscious effort to like, what am I eating? I don't work out a lot. I don't do a ton of physical activity, but like I want to make sure that what I'm putting in my body is healthy and it's not destroying me and I'm not eating too much of it. You can have the good stuff that you like. I still eat everything that I like. I just eat less of it.
Okay.
That's it.
Solid advice.
That's awesome. This was awesome in general. My brain is like just turning from 30 minutes ago trying to process
and see,
one
I'm
thing.
over here like in my imposter syndrome and like my nervousness goes like, did I run all over the place? Did I take them down like 20 different
I think you did absolutely
wormholes?
perfect. I'm trying not to take us down 20 different rabbit holes and make this be
Well,
a
sometimes I have a
4-hour.
really bad habit of like starting to tell a story and then it gets really long and then I forget where the hell I was going with that story. It comes with age, I guess. I don't know. Maybe I drank too much alcohol.
No, and this could have been a 3 to 4 hour podcast if you would have let me, but we're going to cut it off a little bit shorter. And do us a favor, ask some questions down in the comments, and if we get him back on another time, which I think we might, we'll fire them off on the next one.
We're
But
so far away.
tell us how to find you.
So if you're interested in the AI stuff, I actually do write 3 to 5 newsletters a week on AI. It's ideations.com. It's AIDEATIONS. I'm pretty sure you guys can put the little text.
Yeah, we got you.
Put it right here.
Link below too.
If you are interested about AI, otherwise, Facebook, I share a lot of my stuff on Facebook. I'm still one of those millennials that's hanging on to Facebook, even though I absolutely despise them for everything they've done. But it's just where my audience is. So if you want to keep up with me, Facebook's the easiest way. I literally share random bits of my life and AI and what I'm working on there on a regular basis. Oh, one of the things that I really wanted to hit on real quick, if you don't mind, was we talked about your circle, your friends or whatever. Everyone talks about your network is your network is your net worth. All that is very true. And if you're leveling up over time, you're going to have some friends that fall off occasionally. Again, nothing wrong with that. But if you want to really build influence in your area, right, you have to be top of mind. And one of the easiest things to leverage social media for is staying top of mind without having to really spend any money. I have what I call my circle of influence 100. If any of you guys, I heard you mention Russell Brunson on one of your earlier podcasts. He has his Dream 100 that he has you go out and do, like find 100 people, influential people that you like, that you want to meet, you want to talk to, figure out how to get in front of those people. I have the exact opposite. I have what I call my circle of influence 100. So everyone that I meet, I try to get their email address, and I keep up with them every single month. I send them an email that says, hey, here's what I've been up to. Me and my wife, I would share personally. So like, here's what me and my wife have done. We took this trip. We're doing this. Here's what's going on in our businesses. Here's what we need help with. And by the way, if we can help you, please let us know. Don't hesitate to reach out. If you got a fundraiser or charity, whatever you need help with, like let us know so we can at least get the word out or help ourselves. So every month I send that out, and over time that email newsletter builds, but it's only once a month. That's it.
Right.
But I've gotten more business than I could ever care to deal with simply by just staying top of mind and building a network, all by just going on social media one day and going down my list of friends and going, okay, I actually know that person. And then I had a VA reach out to them with a script and saying, hey, I'm working on building out this. Like, I want to keep you guys informed of what I'm doing. Will you provide me your email address? She would put that into my platform, and then literally I would just have that circle of influence where now I get to tell everybody who I am, what I do, how I can help them, and how they can help me. That's all you need to care about.
Oh my God,
like
that's
that.
genius.
I like that.
Did you come up with that yourself, just spinning off of what Russell Brunson did, or?
Yeah, I mean, essentially just spinning off of what he calls it his Dream 100 of reaching out to 100 influential people that you like, that are in your niche or whatever. But yeah, I just kind of took a little bit of that and a little bit of other things, just molded it all together into like a pretty, what I feel like is a great marketing strategy that costs absolutely nothing.
Heck yeah, that's awesome. Dang.
And it's not really a marketing strategy. It's just
Being a good human.
Yeah, it's just being human. That's all it is. And people are getting away from the really polished BS that's been drilled into our TVs and our internets and all that stuff for the longest time, and they're more focused on authenticity, right? So, and that's ultimately like really when you stop caring about what other people think about you, you can be authentic, and if you can be authentic, then you can be happy, right? Everyone's happiness weighs on what everyone else thinks, when ultimately like happiness comes from within. So if I'm doing what makes me happy, what does it really matter what anyone else thinks?
Yeah, the people need to hear that. It sucks you said that at the end of the podcast. Hopefully they stuck around. Those who stuck around did need to hear that. So if you're here listening and that just hit you for a reason.
Good. All right, we're going to close this out.
All right.
We will have him back on again. And comment down below any questions you want to ask him. And do us a favor, share this.
Yeah,
Please
share this,
share.
and all his links will be down below. So if you want to contact him or get on that AI newsletter, go ahead and do that. But yeah, guys, we'll catch y'all in the next one.